And welcome back to the Smoke Pit. This is a podcast by veterans for everybody. My name is Katie Torbeck. I am the president of 5051 Vets, and I'm an Army vet.
Hi, Rory, 5051 Vets Comms Director, Army vet also.
I am Carl. I'm a retired United States Marine with 20 years of service, also the founder and CEO of Crambox Politics.
My name is Brian Winter. I am a member of 5051 Massachusetts. I'm an outreach lead there, and I also do some writing and public speaking and that kind of thing.
With Rory being on and with some shit going down this week, I think the first thing I want to talk about is the additional deployment of the 82nd. You live there. I'm sure you know people involved and what's going on. Like, let's
I actually don't, only because, from my understanding, it is the IRF, and my old unit is not on that at the moment. But I do know people that are still on post, etc. We've heard anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000. Hannah just came in and told me, because I heard 2,500, I think, and then 3,000, and then
as of today, they changed it to 1,015.
Okay.
That's
okay. But I know I've been hearing planes, but they've been at night, so that's the fun part.
Yeah. Welcome, Mayhem. We're talking about the additional deployment of the 82nd. It was kind of how I wanted to open it because it's big news this week. And you two, Mayhem and Carl, look like you're going to owe me monies. Because I bet that we were going to send troops to Iran, boots on ground, knew it was coming. Y'all wished it away.
Does that mean you owe me money if I got it all the way down to the island?
Yeah, I will share the profits because we're a morbid group of people, and so we bet on morbid things. And I think it speaks volumes that it came out publicly, right? Is that they announced it publicly that we're sending troops. We've been watching it behind the lines and seeing everything. And so Mayhem, Brian, Carl, what's your thoughts on additional troops heading that way?
So what's interesting to me here is that they announced it publicly. I think that's worth noting. What that means is this is intended perhaps as a threat. They want them to know that we're going to do the thing and that we're still in this, to kind of threaten the Iranians a little bit. And we know, I think, with certainty that they're going to be seizing Karg Island, right? Is that sort of like where we're thinking? And for those who do not know, Karg Island is essentially the oil terminal for essentially all Iranian crude. And so this takes some money theoretically off the table for the Iranians if we were able to seize the island. So as a strategic objective, it makes sense to seize. I don't know. What are y'all's thoughts? I feel like I got to chew on this a little more to have something more intelligent to say.
So I'll say this. I actually reached out to Barbara Lee today, who, if you remember, was the sole naysayer against the AUMF in 2001. So I spoke with her office and have reached out to ask her to join the Disorderly Conduct podcast. And behind that, what I will say is I am deeply disappointed.
There's a plan for this, right? And what I mean by that is if you remember back early in 2025 when Donald Trump was going after in Lembassy in Canada and Greenland and Denmark and talking about how he's going to incorporate this, one of the things that was asked of Secretary Hegseth is whether or not the Pentagon was drawing up plans in order to invade Canada or in order to invade Greenland. And his response is, we have plans for everything. There is a plan for this. And I can't really go any farther into that because the plan is itself classified. And I only know about the plan because I was an Intel Marine for 20 years. And the way that we trained was off of that plan. So when we learned how to do Intel, that's what we did because that was the enemy at the time, or the next enemy, right? We all thought that it was Afghanistan, then Iraq, and that because we had both sides, we're going to go in and hit Iran next, but we never did. But there is a plan. I would say that Karg Island fits into that plan. However, I would also point out that the Strait of Hormuz is still a problem, right? Because even if they do take Karg Island, it doesn't change the fact that Iran has a stranglehold on the world's oil supply. And so, I think that the other aspect of that is going to be Marines taking the Strait of Hormuz. And the way that they're going to do that is by doing limited incursions into the shore, the littoral region of the strait in order to take it. Caveat that with, in addition to the rumors and the reports about how the command element of the Airborne has already gotten orders. They're going. We've also gotten reports and messaging from Iran that indicate their intent that should boots get put on the ground in any of their territories, they will, in their words, carpet bomb their own territory in order to kill Americans. And I don't put that past them. I also don't believe that we have the capacity to defend against any type of attack that Iran would launch on our ground forces. I mean, we've already seen that they've been successful not only in hitting bases in Kuwait, bases in Bahrain and in Qatar and the UAE, but we've also seen them demonstrate a capability to hit targets within Israel and get through their Iron Dome. So I think that this is one of those situations where the president got up and said people will die. Yeah, people are going to fucking die if we put boots on the ground. And that's just that's the problem that I have, is that there's no foresight on this. There's no second or third order effects. It's just we are the most powerful nation in the world, and we will do what we want to do and however we want to do it without thinking about the second and third order effects.
Yeah, also worth noting that Iran fired a 1,000-kilometer ranged ballistic missile at a ship, I believe in the Indian Ocean. This missile missed the target. However, the fact that it was able to fire this missile at all is interesting because we weren't aware that they had a missile with that kind of range, which means they actually have the capacity to hit Europe, right? Like Europe center. Like they could send a missile to Paris if they wanted to. And given the depletion of air defenses because of the Ukraine war, and I mean, this is why they're able to break through and harangue Israel and harangue the Gulf region, is because we had all these radar systems and everything else set up to do air defense specifically to contain Iran. Well, that system has now been depleted because of Iran's sort of like approach of attrition. And so we don't have the capacity to defend it anymore. So when people say like, Iran is winning the war, you're hearing that narrative a lot out there. In terms of like tactics and strategy and like what resources are on the ground in what location, they actually are. We don't have the capacity to surge the necessary strength that we need. 82nd Airborne is great, but it's a light infantry division, right? It's not going to be able to deal with Shahed drones by the tent.
Yeah, and I mean, I can, from my perspective, and we've seen these numbers, right? I sat in on some of this stuff. We've looked at hard target defeat in, certain places, right, where we feel like there are threats. And, they've said, I've heard projections that are close to 50% casualties expected on ops like that. I've heard 30% in reference to naval warfare with them. I mean, so, in the way that I view this, you're playing with fire right now. And I think this is also another example, another indicator that they have no intention of leaving the White House, right? And where I draw that conclusion is, if you put 3,000 troops on the ground and in a matter of a few months, those troops are killed, there will be no coming back from that in terms of being electable, right? Because we are way too close, and we were already made promises that this would not happen, right? We're way too close to the GWAT having already transpired and cost us that many lives, right? And so I think it's political suicide if the plan is to be elected.
I agree with you on that point because I believe we're not looking at this correctly. You are right. They've been stockpiling for years. We looked at the propaganda video earlier amongst ourselves that they put out where they're like, can't wait for you to hit the ground, because they're looking at it as not only retribution for themselves, they're looking at it as retribution for Gaza and Lebanon and Yemen and Afghanistan and Iraq. And so when Iraq fell and we created this power vacuum, and the geopolitical stance was that Iran sucked up that power vacuum and then spent all of those years while our focus was on Iraq and Afghanistan building their plans and their munitions and things of that nature. I don't think that this is going to be quick. I think we're looking at mass casualties. And one of the bigger issues that's not talked about enough is, the AUMF, and that needs to be rescinded. I am a constitutionalist. I believe that war powers should go through Congress. And ever since 2001, it has been overused. We have harmed many countries around the world using that as the policy behind it. And it has only expanded, right? They've rescinded parts of it, but it, like, the power of it has expanded over time. And so I am a firm believer we need to push to rescind that and go back to the constitutional way of war powers residing in Congress. Anybody's thoughts on that, on like a push of rescinding AUMF altogether?
I would love to see that. And I hope that's I'm very interested to hear what now Mayor, but former Congresswoman Lee has to say regarding this. I want to hear that wisdom. She saw the handwriting on the wall 25 years ago. I wonder how her mentality has been shaped by what she saw, having called it. And I would like to know, as somebody who had some experience in Congress, going against Congress in particular, what she sees as the path forward for that, rescinding that.
I mean, the problem is Congress has fundamentally ceded its power, which is something that has happened essentially every time we get a new president. That president gets a little more powerful and agitates people. Even Biden, he was doing things with like student loans and stuff. It was probably at the edge of like what you're actually allowed to do as president. He said, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyways. And, they can fight me in the courts. And he got some stuff through that maybe, even if you agreed with it, probably shouldn't have gone through from a constitutional perspective. And it's like, as soon as people get a hand of that power, they say, well, now I can use it to remake the world the way I want. And this is the fundamental problem, because this whole thing is supposed to be built on consensus.
I don't see that getting taken down until there is a mass U.S. force casualty in this war. So I do expect that once we put boots on the ground and Iran does what they're threatening and takes out an entire battalion, if not more, that's when the senators and the representatives will stand up and say, okay, no more, pull our troops out.
Yep. And I think my big concern, because again, right, what are you going to do? Right. One of the points, actually, it was Anton Scalia that actually made this point, right? And I'll make it again here. He was somebody had asked a question about the Constitution, and he was commenting on the Russian Constitution. And he said, ours is not the greatest Constitution out there. It's not. Read the Russian Constitution. And he talks about all the ways in which it's superior. He said, but, right? They don't use it. Nobody follows it. And so my question, as we watch the erosion of constitutional principle in this country, is it our expectation that when this, frankly, spineless Congress stands up and starts making demands, that the president or the DOD is going to start pulling troops back?
So Scalia was actually aping a very old argument, and it actually comes from the conservative side of the spectrum. This is like basically a Burkean argument. And the argument was that underneath your sort of paper, the Constitution, piece of paper, there needs to be kind of a social contract, and there needs to be some sort of agreed upon sort of ideological framing in which we do that. One of the advantages that we have for us in this struggle is that the Constitution itself is a document that takes on kind of a sacred valence. Like people, we treat it almost like a relic, like it's almost like a civic religion, the way we talk about the Constitution. And this is actually strange to a lot of Europeans when we talk about the Constitution of the Founding Fathers. Like, Democrat or Republican, we have a certain amount of reverence that they find unusual. That's actually really, really useful when you are under like an autocratic attack, because that sort of ideological framing can be utilized instantly and people get it right away, right? And it makes sense to people on a deep, deep level. And so that kind of, this is why the symbolic reclamation that 5051 has been pursuing, this idea of taking the flag back. The reason that has worked is because it's connected to that mythology and everybody gets it at kind of like the lizard brain level.
I agree. I mean, I know even as veterans, we have such a reverence for the Constitution because our oath is to the Constitution, right? And it's not to a party, it's not to ideology. It's so using that as talking points, especially with Republicans and kind of like on the fence Republicans, is great, and owning that. And I think the bigger talking point is, but in the document that is given to the three branches. And so I am wondering your ideas on how do we get back to the actual Constitution and how the founding fathers did set it up, right? Like to function, because it's not functioning the way it's supposed to.
So there's two things that need to happen. First thing needs to happen is that we need to have a Congress that is willing to claw it back from the president. And what I mean by that is we need to have a Congress that is unafraid to oppose their own party if that party is control of the Oval Office. So that's the first thing, is we need to have a legislative branch that has a spine. On the flip side of that, we also need an executive. We need to elect a president who's going to walk into office and on day one say, listen, I'm going to sign one single executive order. And that executive order gives Congress 12 months to review all prior executive orders and executive agreements and either codify them or not. After that 12 months, they expire. And then from there on out, any further executive order that is written will have an expiration date. And we need to have that. And then we need Congress to codify that expiration date into the process, because the only way for us to really get to a point where we have that struggle is we need, like I said, we've got to have all three branches willing to struggle. If they're all willing to just cede power, then at no point in time will we ever restore that balance. That's kind of what I see about it. Mayhem, you're the constitutional expert, so I would.
So, first of all, I don't consider myself more of an expert, on the Constitution than others. I do love it and I do read it a lot. But I would say that I really like that idea. I think it's novel. And I think it's the appropriate thing. One of the things I just think we need I might get crucified for this, but we need a president, maybe not with all the same policies, but with the same mentality as President Obama had. Right? He went too far in some areas, right? But for example, coming in and saying to the Justice Department, you are an independent agency and I expect you to behave as such. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not here to tell you what to do. A very different thing than we're seeing. And we see how it's being weaponized. And and did you guys, sorry, I got to bring this up. Did you guys see that now there's an investigation into Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski that has just been launched by the Inspector General of DHS? And that is because they found something in the neighborhood of, I can't remember if it was 220 billion or 220 million, but it was a lot of money in contracts that were no bid contracts, just handing out money to the homies. Crazy. Yeah.
Not just that, but a no bid contract to a media company that had been stood up 5 days prior and was run by one of her friends.
Yeah, that's right. It was a $220 million ad campaign, if I recall.
Mm-hmm.
Love the homie hookup.
Look, it all filters down. And I think, Brian, and I hope you guys have been listening to the Smoke Pit regularly. I think Brian made the point how these types of narcissist personalities attract others like them. And the point was made excellently. I think you made the point, Katie, also, that in his first administration, he was surrounded by kind of establishment folks that were like, yeah, we're not doing that, right? And advising him, and he just didn't like anybody arguing with him. And so the second time around, he has attracted all of these bad personalities like Kristi Noem, like that pencil neck bitch, Stephen Miller, right? And I'm going to continue to say he's a pencil neck bitch. Stephen Miller, if you get a chance to see this, I want you to know that if I got my hand around your throat, you wouldn't be able to do anything to get it off.
He looks like a fucking pimple. You could pop it like a zip.
All right, but yeah, sorry, I'll go back to professionalism here for a sec. I think that, those types of people are the ones driving a lot of this. And so it has to start with that executive leader. So I agree with you, Carl. I think, it has to be a leader that comes in and says, look, guys, what we just saw, that's not what's happening here. Really do a good, and I think it's hard to do, right? You don't have a lot of time in that office. I think you have to have a great staff. I think you have to have hard workers. And I think you need Congress to know and respect what you're trying to accomplish to help you with that. And all of their staff. It's gonna be a hike.
I think the corruption within this administration is so staggering, right? Like, not only Kristi Noem, but we started this out with Tom Homan, accepting bribe money before they were even put in, right? The changeover happened. And so the corruption is staggering on multiple levels. So nothing about Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski is surprising, right? Because the $220 million also, the one part y'all forgot to mention, is most companies who do federal government contracts, because I happen to work for a company that does federal government contracts, you don't get that amount of money on your first bid. Like, that's just not how that works. You don't become a government contractor and go through that process, and the first bid you win is like $220 million. It's just not how the federal government works with its money and its oversight. I also do want to point out, I saw in the news today that Kristi Noem was caught again with Corey Lewandowski on a plane for the Shield of America's trip. Did y'all see that? No? Yeah, came out today, and even Republicans are like, girl, what are you doing? Like, you've already been fired and you've been demoted. They made up a job for you so you don't end up in prison. And then you continue to do crazy stuff. But the cabinet as a whole is the most unqualified cabinet we've ever had. And so when we're talking about the policies and the rhetoric, and Brian went over the narcissism, it's not just Donald Trump. He has surrounded himself with narcissist people that blatantly abuse power and are loyalists. And I don't know about y'all, but I have watched hearings, committee hearings and stuff like for the last decade or more of my life because I'm a nerd and I like it. But this is the first time that I've ever seen a cabinet so blatantly ignore the law and lie under oath. Like just like there's no consequences to their actions. And I think that part is what makes me extremely nervous, is that we always believe in accountability. Even as veterans, we always believe in accountability. But when you have a cabinet, an entire cabinet that is acting like accountability is never going to be had, that is extremely dangerous. And we need to look at that because especially when we're talking about war, like we're at war right now. Pete Hegseth classified military funerals. That has never fucking been done in this country's history. Never. We have always honored our fallen. Always. We may not have always released the names to the public, but we have at least listed the number, but now we're classifying military funerals. That's insane and dangerous. And as veterans, like, does that y'all concerned about that?
Absolutely. That is absolute horseshit. But here's the thing. Once again, this administration, right? Let's call it 500 soulless motherfuckers out there, right? Really working hard to undo America, right? Everybody always forgets we are undefeated against tyranny and there's 300 million of us that are armed to the teeth. You'll get away with it for a time. But as soon as mothers and fathers start having to bury their sons and daughters again, and then you're lying to them, and then you think you're going to just hang out in the White House and after 2028 is over or install somebody, I think you will see a tremendous American response to that.
I think the reckoning may be coming sooner than anybody thinks.
Yeah.
You know, I think that they were betting on 2028. But if Florida is any indication as to what is coming, 2 out of 3 elections last night in my state flipped blue, including Palm Beach, where Mar-a-Lago is. So that's chef's kiss.
Before you celebrate that, I would caution and temper it with what did the turnout look like? Was
And
it
shitty.
low? So if it was lower than what it looked like in 24, that could be an indication that we might see a revival come the end of this year when they do the general.
I would have to push back on that because if you look at the historical numbers of general elections compared to midterms, there's always a downturn of voter turnout. And so if you compare the data to historical turnout, it's about the same level. But the different data point that is coming out in these elections is that Republicans are just not voting. And so instead, and I think that that's a data point that we need to explore more, especially like I'm a registered Republican, is maybe we are not going to flip Republicans to vote blue, but maybe they're just not going to vote.
So early in the movement, I got the opportunity to meet with one of the top experts on authoritarianism in the country. I won't say the individual's name. The individual reminded me it was a great opportunity. It was a great honor because they were trying to help us get started and laid out some predicates on like how to structure a movement and how to like build things in scale and like that type of thing, like what they've seen studying history and all this and that. Introduced us to a concept called spectrum of allies. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this. For those viewers who are not familiar with it, the way we think about voting is a binary. You're voting for red or blue, or you don't vote at all. And so we kind of think of this as binary. But actually, that's the wrong way to think about it. Instead, it's more like I like to think of it like a glass of beer, just for like an example. So you could be like a 5 for like the Democrat or Republican Party, okay? And basically that means you'll go out and vote, but you're not going to tell your friends and you're not going to evangelize for it. But if you got somebody who's like a 12, that means you fill up the beer and it's overflowing into everybody else's glass. What you're doing, this is enthusiasm. All of the enthusiasm right now is in the opposition. Now, the opposition doesn't know what to do because we have 900 different theories of the world, and that's our problem, right? But there's a lot of us, and we know we don't like that. Right. And there doesn't seem to be any enthusiasm on the Republican side. And I suspect is because a lot of those folk are actually realizing that they screwed up And they're just trying to find a way to like, and so maybe they say, well, I might still vote Republican, but I'm not going to tell my friends about it. And I'm going to take down the Trump flag. And you're going to see this kind of thing where people are walking back their own enthusiasm. And so now they're depleting. Instead of being like active antagonists, they're like a passive antagonist or neutral. And that's good. That's a victory. You're never going to get people from 10 to 0 in terms of moving them to your side, but you might be able to get them go from 10 to 7. And if you do that, you're subtracting enthusiasm from the entire MAGA movement as a whole.
So I think that's a really interesting point. And I think it's an important one. I think we are absolutely witnessing right now. One of the things that's a hallmark for me of MAGA, that it has been, is that they are loud and that they are obnoxious and that they are quite obviously fucking wrong, right? But they were so loud and obnoxious that even those loud and obnoxious ones that are now thinking, what have we done, right? And they're out there. They put themselves in a very difficult position, right? Because of how they spoke to people, them cheering for, political rallies on bases, them, cheering for his nastiness, right? Yeah, we just want somebody that's going to just tell it like it is, and now they're seeing it. And so I think for me, it's been an exercise in having these discussions. What do you think about that? And I try to find places where it's like, everybody's going to agree about this. And I think one of the most damaging things they did was messing around with the Epstein files, redacting them, trying to pretend like Trump's name didn't come up 38,000 times. I mean, and so, when you consider all of these things, I think that they are going to lose a whole lot of ground in the midterms. I know there's all kinds of, I think there's lots of folks thinking that they're gonna hang on or have a significant victory. But we saw, 2 counties, or what'd you say, 2 out of 3 get flipped there. We saw one in Georgia that hasn't flipped in 25 years in Georgia. You know what I mean? So people are waking up and they're getting pissed. And it's the conglomeration, I think, of all the things we're describing and seeing. It's the corruption. Now you're going against the military, right? And we're classifying funerals. You have, then Donald Trump throwing Hexas under the bus, saying basically the war in Iran is his fault. And it's like, okay, first of all, even if anyone were stupid enough to think that were true, Don, right? You appointed him against everybody's advice. He was only a major. How is he going to be making strategic decisions when the highest level that he served is the fucking company, right? Now you want to try to put that on him? No, that's 100%. Even if it were a decision that he made, that is 100% on you.
I do think it's an interesting point, though, because I watched a video of a retired, I believe he was a brigadier general, speaking. For those of you watching or listening, that's a 1-star. Speaking on Pete Hegseth and his lack of qualifications. He was a flunky out of the military. He got kicked out of the DC National Guard for being an extremist. And now he runs the secretary of, the Department of Defense. And coming from a 1-star who generally, for those watching, don't understand, like once you get to that level, the way you speak is very monitored and scaled back. Like even your wives know that what you say is like holds weight. And so when you have generals speaking out about the qualifications or lack thereof of the Secretary of Defense, I think it speaks volumes, and people need to pay attention to that on a larger scale, is you have someone that is wholly unqualified leading men and women into battle right now, who, like Mayhem said as he was staring so kindly into our souls and giving us all the feels, he's unqualified, right? And our sons and daughters are going to battle with someone that has only been at company level, which for those of you who don't know the military structure, that's the lowest. Well, squad is technically, and then you
Right.
got platoon.
I guess it's good we don't have a team leader in there.
I mean, he's a head of hair on Fox News, and Donald Trump likes the way he looks on TV because he's a reality TV guy. Like his whole persona and everything he believes is fake. It's all that. And he's a Christian nationalist, and he was credibly accused of beating women, to the point that his mother put out an op-ed about how her son is unfit, right? Like, you have to be a real asshole for your mother to denounce you, and that actually happened to Pete Hegseth. So Like these are the goons and lunatics that Trump attracts around him because he doesn't care that they're amoral. Actually, he likes it. It's an advantage because he can push their buttons and make them do crap that he wants them to do because they have no shame like him.
For those of you that are like retail or like fast food restaurant workers, he was essentially the equivalent of an assistant manager.
Like hearing you talk about him being a major and only being at the company level, for me, what I think of is like company commander, which is a captain in the Marine Corps. And major gets bumped up to like executive officer in a battalion. So like when I hear you talking about this stuff, I'm thinking in my head, like, okay, so the Army's got a different command structure.
Than the Marine Corps
does.
it's not that it's different. It's different and soft. So you have in the Ranger Regiment, your PLs are going to be captains, and then your company commanders are going to be majors. It's the same thing. Your team leaders in Special Forces are captains, and then your company commanders are majors. Now they adjacently, like you say, they will go from that command slot when their time's up into a staff position at the battalion level.
Okay.
It also depends on the company size, because when I was part of HHC STBK on Yonsong, when I worked under the STBK commander, our company commander was a major because everybody was detached to work at battalion and the White House. And so I feel like they wouldn't give a captain that responsibility because he had like a bunch of detached people. So I do think that it depends on the size. But the bigger thing is that he was kicked out of the National Guard in DC because of his extremist tattoos, right? And now we have fed that into leading troops. And we have seen the rise of issues within the command. I don't know if y'all have been tracking it. I track stuff very closely on Fort Hood because it's a fucking nightmare. And there's another female soldier, another Vanessa Guillen style happening right now again, right? And we as a group, all of us, right, our focus is on authoritarianism. And so trying to keep authoritarianism at bay while trying to still protect our community is difficult when you have Pete Hegseth, who has come out and made, reporting more difficult, safety more difficult within the military. And now women are being murdered again openly on Fort Hood again. So, it's a big issue when we have these problems. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was organizing power collectively, because we all have power, right? Mayhem runs money out of politics. We have crayon box politics on here with Carl. We have Mass 5051 on here. Rory runs not only comms with us, but he's in FRC. And then you have Hannah, his wife, who is sitting next to him, works with Common Defense. And so we as veterans know what is going on right now is wrong on a deep level, a deep fucking level. And we have no kings coming up. So what does it mean to organize power collectively as veterans across the board, across the country, in our own spaces? And I have been an organizer for a very long time within the veteran space. And with no kings coming up, I wanted to talk about organizing power with people who have done it. And so, Mayhem, what does it mean to you as a veteran for us to collectively organize power together to utilize our voice?
So I think we're the only ones that can do it. I've been in this space, and it, frankly, at times is frustrating to work with civilians who have never been in the military. They think everything should come down to a fucking vote. They drag their feet on too much shit. They don't take initiative. They don't always tell the truth. A lot of them are clout chasing, right? There's just not enough stability. And so I think if we can improve our network, right, our degrees of separation, lessen them, and get organized in a way that we can start to coordinate across not just organizations, but coalitions, right? When we first started Money Out of Politics, it started out as we're recruiting people. Then it became, okay, we're going to start recruiting organizations and try to build a coalition. Then it became, we want to start recruiting state coalitions. This is how you get that power quickly. This is how we went from, operating, having an office in DC and operating out of North Carolina to operating in all 50 states. And so I think, and really from us, look, we've been supporting other organizations, and that's really it, right? Helping them with tech, helping them with anything that they need help with, anything that we can, ideas, writing. I mean, because I think that that's all you need to do. So I think the answer is leaning on the veterans space in a way across coalitions broadly, because we do know how to get shit done. And there's enough of that esprit de corps between veterans from all branches where when it's time for a mission, people start shutting up and getting to work. I think that's viable.
I actually spent time working with OutServe SLDN prior to the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And then once the Don't Ask, Don't Tell went away, myself and a group of individuals, we separated from OutServe SLDN and developed and created Sparta. And so what Sparta was designed to do is kind of basically the same thing but for transgender veterans and service member, because when Don't Ask, Don't Tell got repealed, it didn't include the transgender side. And so that's what Sparta was created and centered around. I agree with Mayhem. I think that military personnel are uniquely suited to be the center of mass, so to speak, for the growth of these community organizations, just because of the fact that we have that experience and we have that tendency to coalesce around a specific mission and objective. And since I got involved with a lot of these organizations over this past 3 months, I discovered that there tends to be a miss on mission and objectives and how we're going to get there. We don't have a clear mission. The civilian side doesn't know how to write a mission statement the way that we know how to write a mission statement. But what I've also discovered is that there is, especially on the left side of the field, there is a hesitation to work with veterans or be associated with the military writ large. I don't know if it's just the fact that military has a bad name among liberal advocates, but I have noticed that is coming around. I think that might be a hurdle that we need to cross.
As a leftist, I can tell you why. It's because we are imperialist by nature.
I think you care as someone that's not a leftist. I think you'll care too much about people's feelings, but that's my personal opinion. It's like nobody wants to offend anybody.
I think there is something to that because, and it's not just like we can set aside the kind of identity politics, just rat hole that nobody wants to dive into anymore, right? But just outside of that, right? Like does seem to be this sort of like, and I call it the magic word fallacy, when like you're doing like messaging, you're trying to communicate with people, you have 100 people kind of all like languishing over the language to make sure the word is perfect and you include everything. And like, and when I write, like to me, it's about prose, impact, and emotion. And you can only achieve that if you don't sand down the language, because you sand away the rough edges of the language and then it doesn't punch the way it used to. And it looks like, something written by like, the HR department of the Umbrella Corp. Right. And then people don't trust it because it's not real. And so this is something actually that's a confection of the left that the right does not do. Okay. The right just says, fuck you. Here's what I believe. Right. Now, what I like about what's happening with this movement is this movement is actually taking the page out of MAGA's book, and we're doing that. And as a result, we're growing because we're bringing people on board. You can be the fuck you're full of shit guy and be on the good guys team. Right. You don't need to have.
Say, as a leftist, I'm also one of those fuck you guys.
Right. And that's actually important because that's actually how you include people. Most people do not have super sophisticated language skills, and nothing wrong with that. Most people don't need it because you're working a job and you're a roof layer, right? You're a dick and fart guy. That's how you like think about humor and communication. And you get too highfalutin. It doesn't mean they're dumb. You just get too highfalutin and people are, it's just they're gonna shut their brain off. It's like rhetorical oatmeal, right?
Actually, I'm a fart and dick guy. How dare you assume that I'm a dick and fart guy?
Yeah. And I've noticed too, I get along, one more point on this. I get along a lot more with the socialists now for some reason, even though I'm kind of a right of center, like pro-capitalist guy, for that reason, because like the language actually isn't that different in terms of how we approach things. And it's really kind of the mushy middle that has this sort of like language policing instinct that sort of makes it a lot harder to make arguments. So please push back on me because this is my, this is only my personal take, but
no, there's definitely a difference between liberals and leftists.
I'm going to explain the importance of civilians to veterans very directly. Civilians are our caretakers, our rocks, they are what keep us going, whether we're active duty or we're in the veteran space. The bigger thing is veterans, the entire veteran population is 6.2% of the population. So even if 6.2% of the population agreed, which we don't, it would not move the needle, believe it or not. And I speak from a personal standpoint. In 2020, when we were fighting back against military sexual trauma, and women veterans, which are an even smaller portion of the 6.2%, 15% of 6.2% is women veterans in this country. So it's a very tiny population. So when we were speaking out against rape in the military in 2020, we engaged civilians. We engaged moms, we engaged dads, we engaged LULAC. And who led that movement? Civilians, because women veterans had been fighting for decades to fix rape in the military. And who actually got it changed? Undocumented fucking immigrants. That's who. Because women had been fighting for years. But Vanessa Guillen's family, to the day I fucking die, they were undocumented in this country. They went to the White House to talk to President Trump about their daughter. So no, it doesn't matter that you're a civilian. It takes civilians for veterans to fucking exist, right? Like, I know that there are plenty of wives and husbands out there that are the reason veterans function. And without your voice on our issues, it doesn't push the needle. So whenever I'm writing policy or advocating for policy to change the VA for us to get better benefits or VA housing or education or whatever the fuck we're trying to change, veterans speaking out is never enough. It's always civilians that take up our battle and are lobbying just as much as the big five lobbyists of veterans, right? And so without civilians, there are no veterans. And that's my personal opinion. And I think it's everybody's opinion on this panel and on this podcast. Is I have been fighting along civilians for over a decade in the veteran space to make veterans' lives better, right? And people know on here, except for Nick, he's new, like that I'm going through a divorce. And without my ex, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't have gotten a degree. I wouldn't have gotten into veteran advocacy. I wouldn't have been able to go through all of the treatment that was offered to me through the PTSD clinic, through TBI, through speech therapy, because I had a civilian that was helping me function through all of that to get me to where I am today, to be an advocate, to be able to help with policy and change and affect change for fellow veterans. But without a civilian in the background, none of that would have been possible.
I wanted to pull on this thread a little bit because this is something that I always thought was interesting. The vet stuff, like I'm doing activism now, and I basically said, okay, I need to put on the hat. I never even had a hat, and I kind of hated them before. I thought they were corny. Now I wear it all the time, and I kind of like it. But there is something to this where, like, in America, especially, just because we are a culture that respects its warriors. And so, like, veterans are kind of like if you squint at it the right way, they're kind of like a warrior class, right? Like, they thank you for your service. I go to the restaurant wearing the hat, and people buy me beer. Like this happens a lot, and I don't think that's necessarily, I mean, I appreciate it, but I don't think that's necessarily healthy for a society, because what you're doing is you're taking a group of people and you're elevating them above. And then because we have our own internal culture and that we can communicate with each other, that culture it's self-reinforcing. And now in the movement, I think it's really useful because, I've said this before, I see veterans fundamentally as a whisper network because we can talk to each other across political boundaries, across regional boundaries, and we kind of share a common conviction. And the threat we see fundamentally from the administration is constitutional, and it's not necessarily left and right. And there's actually, I've noticed a lot of like Republican types who are with Vets 51 to the other veterans groups. I met a guy 2 weeks ago. He was an Air Force major, okay, in his whole life. Or Air Force colonel, Republican his whole life, huge fan of Winston Churchill. So we sat there and nerded out over history for 2 hours. And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm never voting for these lunatics. They're fucking crazy," and so that's a good thing. These are tools that we can use. But that thing, that kind of warrior caste sort of system that we kind of accidentally created because of the cultural differences is there, and it's real.
I think we're so insular. It's our biggest flaw. All right, so here, y'all will laugh at this and you'll understand it, right? Is how many times have you said something that if you said in this space, we would find hilarious, but said outside of this space, like you get some really odd looks of like, you good? It's like you're like mental health good.
Yeah, I get that now.
You know what I'm saying?
That's hilarious because I literally had one of my longest standing friends. We've been friends for 15 years. She's a civilian in Louisiana. Actually, I used to be in a relationship with like her college roommate. It's how we met. And so whenever me and that girl broke up, Lizzie and I kept being friends. But she called me this morning, and I'm not going to tell you what it was about because it was dark and this is live recorded. But she called me this morning. She said, I just heard something, and you're the only person I could think of to call because it's dark and I'm cracking up. And it was funny. We had a good laugh.
So, hey, Nick, welcome. We saw you pop in, just didn't want to interrupt the flow.
Nick, I'm glad you popped in.
Yeah, definitely. Welcome back.
I mean, on that
Thank you.
That story thing, Nick and I we would have conversations that were definitely not. Those weren't conversations for the general population. So I mean, we do have a different language and a different culture and a different idea of how to do things. But I don't think that there could ever be any type of forward progress without civilians, right? All I'm saying is that if for military veterans, if we don't stand up, if we don't put ourselves in that position where people can look to us and say, what do we do next? Then we are doing a disservice to those civilians that are around us. So that's not to take away from the civilians. That's just saying, hey, listen, our responsibility doesn't end just because we get out. Our responsibility continues until the very day we die. And then for the Marines, we get sent up to heaven and we're guarding the streets up there. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like,
Sorry, I was choking on whatever the fuck that was.
Firewatch forever.
So that's my point.
There's a big faux pas there, communications director.
And for the listeners, if you're not understanding what I'm referring to, it's in the Marine hymn. And I think it's the last, I forgot what they call it, the last chorus. The last verse? Hymn?
Verse.
Verse. There we go.
Last verse. Can you guys hear me?
See, I know it. I just don't know the language.
Okay, cool.
So, Nick.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Since I know you probably have a different opinion and I want to dig into it.
Lord.
Are you ready?
Yeah, send it.
Nick is tough. He can handle it.
And that's why I love him. I love that he's here.
Well, opinions vary.
What's your opinion? What's your...
I don't know. I saw that, they're like handing out water bottles and walking the fuck around. And I noticed a lot of new name tapes. I noticed a lot of new marking systems. I think it's going to be more successful where they're more popular, and I think it's going to be unsuccessful where they are not popular at all. We saw the incident in San Francisco. You never want to see something like that. But having talked to, oddly, in a very strange way, 4 people who were, contact with daily, family and friends and comrades, Carl actually knows one of them, they said that the places that they went, the lines were shorter, there was no issues. I think they know they're there just to be a TSA agent. And, I laugh when they say, oh, these ICE agents aren't trained enough to do TSA. And I think ICE gets less than 50 days of training, but TSA gets 36 days of training. So it will depend on where you are in the spectrum, of course, in the political aspect. And some will see it as, a terrible thing. Others will see it as a great thing. It'll either shorten or lengthen lines, depending on where you are. I think that's kind of the most bottom line way to, I don't care. I'm not flying. So.
Very diplomatically put, by the way.
I would argue that we're going to see the results of this ICE movement into the airports over the weekend, because I don't think that the weekday travel is really going to be something that we're going to see or be able to use as a determination of whether or not ICE presence in the airports is impactful.
Well, yeah, and I think another thing you're going to see, and I'm real interested because you're going to see a lot of travelers, right? So there's a lot of folks in other countries right now, right? They are out for, we call it spring break. They have another word for it in most places. I know if they do up in Canada. I know, for example, Fort Lauderdale is absolutely flooded with college kids right now. So I expect that over the weekend, we're going to start seeing some of those folks come back. Even when I traveled, I was out of the country last week and it was a nightmare. I got to that airport at 5:30 and the line at RDU was snaked probably, I would say 500 meters outside the security little corral, right? I mean, it took me 30 minutes to get to the checkpoint. It was wild at 5 a.m.
Yeah, so the politics around this is interesting. My read on this is we actually probably don't need to be okay, I'm going to be contrarian here, at least for this room. We actually don't need to be worried about ICE in the airport, because why are they there, right? They're there because they can't make a deal on the DHS spending because of the other things that ICE is doing. I also think that's actually a better place for them, and they can do less damage, like, because there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on them. There's going to be cameras everywhere. They have to deal with airport bureaucracy and all that type of stuff. And so, like, you're going to see an increase in sort of like detentions at the airport. I don't think it's going to scale the way it has been in the cities. Like, it's not going to be like a Minneapolis type situation. And not only that, they're unmasked, which means these folk are going to have their photographs taken by somebody. They're going to be gathered somewhere. And now when there's time for accountability, that data will exist because it's going to be public record. It's going to be out there.
I was just about to say, hey, at least they're unmasked in these airports, which means
right. Well, I mean, if they masked them in the airport, it would scare the shit out of the normies.
Now.
If they, they would scare the shit out of the normies if they weren't masked. If they were masked, right? So they have to be unmasked to do that duty. Like, I don't think that they could actually mask, because then that would start to freak people out. And so, like, they have to be friendly because they're so public facing, and they're going to see tens of thousands of people a day. And there also might be an advantage, because that means they're not going to be driving around the cities in squads in as much numbers, because they're needed at the airports, right? And so, to me, this is kind of like a subtle win.
Yeah, Brian, I think that you brought up a really good point. Is airports are probably a good place for them, a port of entry into this country. And as people that believe in law, if everybody here believes in the laws, we know immigration is broken and the laws need to be fixed. That's a completely different discussion than ICE being in neighborhoods, right? Like today in Jacksonville, right, I was alerted by someone local, hey, we haven't really had enough eyes on schools. Like, kids are kind of disappearing. And so that's a problem. And so I would rather see ICE at airports where they are being watched and they are unmasked. And yeah, Nick, the San Francisco video, like, holy shit. Like, first day, and y'all are like slamming a brown woman in front of her child because she couldn't prove she was a citizen fast enough to your liking. Like, my God, what are we doing?
And my question is, what right did you have to ask?
Yeah, I mean, like, because we talked about the SAVE Act, right, last time, and how fucked up that is. I don't carry my passport. However, like, I don't have to worry about it because I'm white. And like, let's be real here. Like, I'm never probably gonna get stopped by ICE. I'll get stopped because I'm rowdy and I'll tell them that they fucking suck. But I'm never gonna randomly get stopped and be like, hey, are you a citizen? So I don't carry my passport. Like, I don't carry any of that form of documentation, my concealed weapons permit. But do any of y'all carry your passport readily available with you daily? Also, because there is a lot of talk about people carrying documents, right? We've seen it in Minneapolis, we've seen it across the country in hotspots for ICE being deployed to cities, is citizens having to carry some proof of citizenship. And that worries me, right? Like, from a constitutional standpoint. And like, what are we doing here? We have, by the way, the unmasked ICE agents in the airports. I don't know if you'll have perused the pictures, but I have, and some of them look like they're 12.
There's some babies, and then there's some round ones.
Yeah, I think those are my favorite ICE agents, the round ones.
And there's also some dinosaurs as well.
You know, that's another thing.
That's getting canceled for fat shaming. Like, we're definitely getting fucking
This is full on Republican line now. But yeah, I will say this.
Yeah.
It's against ICE though. So
I would say that I've often made jokes when I've seen some of these ICE, some of these chunky boys out here, and I'm like, I'm not afraid of this guy at all, right? You know what I'll do? I will turn around and I will jog at a fucking medium pace until you collapse and die, bro. Because
the dude today that I saw, he looked like a freaking twig.
Because I'll keep a 7:30 pace for 10 miles, homeboy. You ready for that? Come on.
I thought, like, I've looked at some of them and thought the same thing. But I think about that about local police at times. I'm not breaking law, nor am I saying that I'm running from the cops, Carl, before you have an aneurysm. I'm just saying, I sometimes look at local police and I'm like, I could outrun you.
And I mean, I use the term run loosely. I mean, we're talking light jog. We're talking warm up.
Yeah, it's just like I could probably outrun you. But no, I mean, I'm glad we all sort of agree on the usefulness of ICE in the airports, because that's where they should be. It's like ports of entry. But
I think they're useful everywhere.
yeah, just we don't.
I know. I'm
We
tracking
can
that
talk about that if you
Not in their,
want.
yeah, I mean,
100%.
our objection, our objection has
you-
always been like in their current form. Like, because the things they're doing, like the way they're haranguing people, they're like doing things like going to Home Depot and just like grabbing all the brown people and putting them in the back of a van and then sorting them out at the station. Like, what are they like? This is not how you do law enforcement. We had immigration enforcement before, right? And the way it was, you have two guys with a blazer serve a subpoena and say, okay, here's your court date, and then they find the guy, and then only when the guy doesn't do the thing that he needs to do, then it's
Yeah, but we didn't have
deep-
20 million people come in during those times.
well, I mean,
22, 24 million people.
it's about 15 million. We have 15 million undocumented immigrants. Most of them, a good chunk of them are overstayed visas.
I think it was actually less.
Overstayed
I think it was
visas is
14.
not an acceptable excuse. Dude, that's like me coming over your house saying, hey, Brian, I'm here to visit my mom. She's 40 minutes away, but I'm going to come stay on your couch. I'm going to be here for a week. And you plan for that week. And then 3 weeks later, I'm still farting in the same couch cushion? Bro,
Is your mom
You're
going
gonna be
through
like,
that?
Right.
And
Does
they're
your mom
not-
have cancer?
Hensley,
But an
Nick, does your mom
snore?
have cancer?
get the fuck out.
Hold on. Let Carl wants to say something, and
Yeah,
then I want to
Sorry.
bring up a policy point.
Yeah. So Nick, I don't know if you still snore, but your snoring is terrible. I've roomed with you,
It's
and it's
worse
bad.
now.
No way. There's no possible way, man.
Not on a
Dude,
seat now.
and I'm grinding my teeth. Bro, I'm grinding my teeth into my skull. It's murder, bro. It's
My
murder.
God. For those of you, for everyone else, Nick's snore could tear down walls.
Yes.
But to your point, man, like, listen, like, overstayed visas are not an excuse. Everyone here has already stated that we agree that if you're here illegally, you should be deported. The problem that we have is not the fact of the deportation. The problem that we have is the manner of the deportation, right? Like the violation of the law that is illegal immigration is not a criminal offense. It is a civil offense. And yet we're sending people into these homes and into these places of business in full tack gear in order to arrest someone who has violated a civil offense. Like, where do we get off on that, right? So at some point we have to say there's a level of okayness to this, and the Trump administration and ICE under the Trump administration has greatly exceeded that level of okayness, and they're in the realm of, nah, fam, like, this ain't good because what you're doing is bad. And we all should agree that level of not okayness is something that is not good for our country. It's not good. It's not a good look. And so that's the point here, right? It's got nothing to do with whether or not we're deporting people. I'll add to that again. I mentioned it last time, and I'll mention it again. If the issue was the need to increase efforts to deport people, then the Trump administration, both 1.0 and 2.0, would have a higher number than Obama and Biden individually.
Well, no, they had a less saturated area of operation. They had a much less saturated area. I mean, we're talking about more people who came in.
What?
What?
Bro, think about it.
I mean,
Think
we have
about
the
it.
internet. We can confirm the numbers.
Well, then maybe you know what? Maybe my understanding of the numbers is wrong, and not as many people got through the border that I have been told or researched or looked at. I mean, my internet's slow,
Nick.
but I think I have the same internet.
The verifiable number is not 20 million. It's like 14.2, 14.3. And so there's a differential of about 6 million people, which is a vast number. The premise behind the smoke pit is it's a chill place next to the barracks after work where we're all chilling and chatting. In the military, you come from all different ideologies, all different backgrounds from all over the country with different upbringings. And so the greatest thing I took away from the military is what I learned from others. And a lot of those hard conversations among differing ideologies happened within the smoke pit. And it's with people that I really did not agree with what they believed in. But it was after work, after a hard day, we were either in the field, on the range all day, and we were in the suck together. And that's what binds us together as the military and as veterans, is we have a unique experience amongst ourselves that only we get within our own community. And so earlier we had talked about like the inclusivity of our community. And that's why, is because a lot of us on this call are combat vets. So we can talk about combat together and it doesn't matter the ideology. What matters is our oath to the Constitution, and we keep it directed towards that. The premise of this, when we originally started the Smoke Pit, was for conversations like this of veterans of different ideological beliefs coming together and having hard conversations amongst ourselves. And the reason being is so civilians can see it happening and know it can happen, is that you don't have to hate the other side. You don't have to not talk, and it has to escalate towards violence, right? And I know Carl's cringing when I say escalating towards violence, but that's where we're headed if we don't have these conversations face to face. And no matter what anybody thinks, the military has always been a microcosm for the larger society as a whole. And what I mean by that is we desegregated before society did. DADT went away before federal law was passed for gay marriage. So anybody that ever thinks that the military isn't testing grounds for like larger society is sadly mistaken. And I hope you do your historical research, because we are the microcosm that shit is tested in, including vaccines. So
Ain't that the truth?
it comes out years later. So the thing is I know that you think it's a bad look, but we think it's a great look, because we want to have these hard conversations with people like Nick that don't believe like us, that don't think like us. But because at the end of the day, his belief system may not be ours, but we both love our country immensely, and we both serve this country, and we're both devoted to this country moving forward. Now, Nick wouldn't be on this up here with us if I thought that he was far right and gone. You know, like most veterans, like I have explained and have spoken on numerous times, are conservative. 65% of the veteran population voted Republican in the last election. And the reason because of that is misinformation and lack of education. Like Republicans fund the military better, active duty. Democrats fight for veterans benefits better. And so until more veterans educate themselves in that fact, they will continue to be voting Republican against their own benefits.
Nick, so you said you gave an example of if you came over and stayed on the couch and farted on it, and you said a week and you stayed a lot longer. Is your mom going through something? Does she have cancer? Et cetera, et cetera. Because some shit like that, then yeah, stay as long as you fucking need to.
Go ahead.
A lot of these people are seeking asylum, just like you would be if you were to take care of your mom.
Yeah.
Well, I'd figure out a way to get it done, because I'm like a normal, rational, capable human being. And if somebody was on my couch 2 weeks longer than I wanted them, I'd choke them out and then chuck them out the door. And if they had a key, I'd either A, change the locks, which takes an enormous amount of time. If you've ever done that, it's a pain in the ass. Or I would take their keys. I don't know. I just think about it very, very differently. I think it shows an overstay of a visa, regardless of why, shows a disrespect for our procedures, shows laziness on their part. And I understand that there are hurdles that could be associated with that, but we have consulates and embassies for a reason. They're the people to go through. And we always talk about nobody knows where to go to get this information, and we've got to show them, and we've got to be the ones to explain it to them. If we do, it kind of goes back to that, concealed carry weapon holder who shoots himself in the foot, calf, ankle, private part, cleaning his gun, and it shoots the car across the street. It goes into that kind of natural selection, folk. And it's okay. It's okay. If we overstayed our visas in certain countries, you know what they would do to us? Carl, remember we had to get all those stupid ass fucking visas for all that continent stuff? Mm-hmm. Imagine if I overstayed my visa in some of those places. What would they do to me? You guys would name your...
That's the difference between them and us, though.
Well,
aren't
there's
we
no
supposed to be
difference.
America? Aren't we supposed to be this shining light for the world? and have Lady Liberty lead the way.
Yeah, only if
but
we're not only rules.
Let's circle tightness. Mayhem has had his hand up. So go ahead, Mayhem.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. The comment was for the 8 spades in the comments, because I think one of the most important things that I've heard along the lines of having these important discussions was it is not like, changing someone's mind or helping someone see something a different way is not a matter of a conversation, right? It's not how it works. It's not how it happens. You don't have a conversation with somebody and they go, man, I've just been wrong my whole life. Thanks, right? It's not quite how it goes. It's more like a pile of rocks on one side of the road, and each conversation is you taking one of those rocks and placing it on the other side of the road. And what you'll understand is that over time, it's possible to carry enough of those rocks over to have somebody see something different, right? But you have to carry the rocks, right? So this is what I was talking about earlier. We touched on it, and you made the point for us pretty well in the comments, right? This isn't a good. No, it is an excellent look to sit and have these conversations, because if you don't, what happens is you end up with a Congress that screams at each other and shut down the fucking government.
So tired of getting screamed at. I'm just tired of getting screamed at.
He's just passionate.
No, not Mayhem. I'm just saying he's exactly right. Like, I'm tired of getting screamed at. I'm tired of the hearings in the House being clickbait for fucking TikTok. There's nothing substantive. The House is dead. Dude, the House is going to flip with whoever is in fucking office. It'll always be an offset. It'll always be a midterm. You guys know that y'all are going to win the midterm. They're going to impeach the fuck out of everybody. It will never get through the Senate. And that's just kind of the way it's going to be. So it's super frustrating when people think that because this person doesn't think the way that I do, they're crazy. And none of us, well, Mayhem may be a bit crazy, but most of us are, we're not crazy, right? And we're not adversarial. We are the same thing. And I want to make a note, being a veteran is very, very important, and it's special. And going back to your whole civilian thing, it's more special to the civilians than it is to us, because we're all veterans. Like, yeah, no shit. Everybody was in the war. Yeah, like, no, yeah. Like, who do you talk to who wasn't, Like, we're not special, bro. Like in our, our community, we're not fucking special. You know what I'm saying? And, it's usually turds who get like super high medals and stuff because they were like light, it's insane. But, to just assume ignorance proves a kind of arrogance. And I think that's our problem, because think about all the Navy SEAL hate you see on the internet. Think about all the you see like a veteran business startup and you're like, man, that guy's t-shirts are crap. That I don't like that guy, or I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, poor quality. When we should be saying, dude, that's a veteran who made a fucking business, dude. Like, who cares if his shit sucked? Better than the business you got. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I digress. I'm sorry. I probably lost track of the point.
It's all right, Nick. This is a safe space. So I wanted to comment a little bit because I feel like we touched a nerve here that's actually really worth teasing out. So when I think about like politics and how people align, I tend to think of it more as like psychology more than anything else. And again, like I come out as I identify as right of center, like I'm pro-capitalist and I'm all that, and strong military defense. We got enemies. We got to be armed, right? I'm in that camp. Conservatives and liberals, or just the broad left, they have different alignments that has been proven to be correlated with certain groupings of psychological traits. And one of those things is an insensitivity on the conservative side to in-group and out-group, okay? Now, this has served me well because I've just redefined who my out-group is. I said, okay, I'm actually decided I'm with these people because they're with the Constitution, and my out-group is all those MAGA chuds over there. And that's actually been really, really effective because I can be a lot more aggressive toward that group because I've identified them as the out-group because they're extra constitutional. Okay. That all sensitivity also goes the other way, where conservatives can sense sort of immediately and quickly when they're kind of on the outs for whatever reason, when the culture has rejected something that they believe. And so this is where like the screamy stuff, even though I do some of it, I'm a hypocrite, right, is actually can be toxic and damaging because you're not actually making the persuasion. Politics fundamentally is a game of addition. We have to find ways to add. Now, on the right, currently, the litmus test for whether you're on the right is essentially whether you're with Donald Trump or not. right? That's actually a really good litmus test because it's simple. It's something that everyone can align on. And it actually ironically allows for them to build a bigger tent because they're bringing over kind of like, anti-vaccine whack jobs and like all these kind of different, like some of the anti-war people who were on the left before are kind of hanging out with the Republicans now. Like kind of the single issue voters seem to be trending that way, right? And you're seeing kind of the opposite problem on the left where we have this kind of like list of like 500 things that you got to believe. And if you say the right thing to the wrong person, so just an internal story, kind of an internal process story, there was so I live in Massachusetts, and one of the problems that we have is natural gas. The natural gas is just too expensive, and there's a pipeline they've been trying to build from Pennsylvania for like a decade, and they can't get the thing built because it's just this whole mess of like trying to get this thing built. I actually favor the pipeline. We should build the stupid thing. There's a lot of people in my circles who wanted to do like a whole protest and use the movement to try and like garnish against this particular pipeline. And I'm like, okay, like what if I state an opinion that I don't actually believe we should do that on the pipeline? Am I going to burn my relationships that I've spent the last year kind of curating? And I probably would. So it's not to say that I'm being silenced or canceled or anything. It's like, that's just a fight I just don't want to have. And so I'm like, okay, you guys do that thing. I don't have to be involved. There's many fish in the sea, right? I think it's a waste of energy. We got to focus on authoritarianism. But this is a sort of dynamic on the left that is toxic culturally because it prevents a sort of mating of ideas that's actually required to create like we're good on policy on this side. We're not good on philosophy. We're not good on like ideology and like centering our sort of principles and understanding where those lines are. And the right is much better at this. Now, I think that is changing because we have folks like us who are making that argument. And there seems to be some introspection going on saying, maybe we shouldn't have been protesting Dave Chappelle, right? Like that is starting to get through. Okay. And I'm in a lot of leftist spaces and they're like, yeah, that doesn't make sense at all. Why did we do that? Right. So like, that's a good thing. And it's important that we think about this and we try to be critical. We are fighting authoritarianism and we can't pretend we're not just to make people feel better. But we still need to be self-critical as well as we go forward because we have to do the addition or this isn't going to work.
Well, I would say I'm is equally scared of, and what we're really talking about, we're all scared of collectivism and it's anti-American and it's just not in our nature. It's the new world. This is our time. We need to consolidate the hemisphere. We have commonalities in the hemisphere that are so much more significant than the differences in the old world and how they interact with one another. And if you think I'm crazy, look at Europe. Think about all the different languages and dialects that exist within a geographical area that is a third of us, but we can all understand one another by and large. So collectivism is the problem, whether it's the right, where you see it as fascism, or it's the left, where you see it as sort of the kind of trifecta, the socialism, the democratic socialism, and the communism. And I think communism is probably the most destructive. And we look at the roots of where these things came from. They didn't come from anything here. That is not in our DNA. None of those things exist for us. And we severed that line in 81. And though it still is impactful and there are still, you see correlation, collectivism is the problem. Whether it's, you guys perceive, that we're in an authoritarian kind of takeover, but there were tens of millions of Americans who felt the same about the Biden administration.
I think you're not stating the full reality, right? I think that the belief that collectivism is the problem comes from the propaganda that came out of the Cold War. I think that belief is something that is deeply rooted in Cold War propaganda because we had to do it in order to set ourselves apart from the Soviet Russia and the communist China. And so that's where I think that belief is rooted. What I will say is that I can point to cases where it proves that it's rooted in that, because in the Spanish influenza, when that came out and that became a pandemic, you can see, if you go into the history records, there are advertisements, there are public service announcements, there are all kinds of messaging campaigns that talk to the general public putting masks on and wearing masks in order to preserve society, right? American society looks out for American society. That's the whole reason why after 9/11, the United States of America came together and we collectively lost the war on terror on 9/12, right? So like at the end of the day, what I'll say is that collectivism is not the problem. Collectivism is, as long as we don't get into groupthink, right? That's a problem. But collectivism, as we talk about it, is something that is beneficial to society. I mean, you look at our unions, right? That's a form of collectivism that puts us before me. That's the way that it worked, right? Had we actively engaged in the lockdown under COVID and had all Americans, including myself, who went out without a mask all the time, right, and resisted wearing the fucking mask, right? I'm one of those, right? But if we had all done our part as a society, we would have been able to mitigate the effects of COVID at a much more higher rate, right? Now we can talk about whether or not that's true or not because of the fact that we're dealing with a situation where alternative realities, right? But the fact of the matter is that there is science that demonstrated that. So collectivism is not the problem. I just want to make sure to point that out.
Yeah, Brian. And then I want to kind of push back on the collectivism too.
Yeah. So I don't want to pick a fight about collectivism because the word has too many different connotations, right? And there's too many ways to kind of slice it, and it's a little fuzzy what we actually mean by collectivism, and it means something different on the right than on the left, and I'm not sure that that's a terribly fruitful thing. I'm not an expert podcaster.
I want to push back on the collectivism argument just because we're veterans and the military culture is a collectivist culture in and of itself. And not recognizing that is fucking wild. Because as veterans and as active duty, like mission first, it's mission above yourself. So the success depends on the team and putting the group objective above your own personal objectives. So that's one way. Another way is unit cohesion, right? Collectivism within your unit. And that's the trust and loyalty to your team, right? So I know Marines function kind of like the Army in that setup. Carl kind of got into that earlier. And so your squad, right, is you put your squad above yourself. You put the man or woman to your left and your right above yourself, right? Because you depend on those human beings to get you home. And there's a shared responsibility within the military. We all depend on each other. I just spoke on that. And then discipline and hierarchy within it. And that's like the decisions are often like the organizations, it's not individuals. So, like the military in and of itself is built off of a collective culture and
Socialist, for that matter.
I was going to get into that. I was going to lean into that. Like I am not a socialist. I don't believe in socialism. But I do recognize the fact that as a veteran, I live in a socialist society because of the VA, my education, and things of that nature. And in the military, you live in a socialist culture in and of itself is, housing, food, healthcare, right? Like it is socialist in nature. And we don't recognize that enough because we don't teach the structure of what socialism. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like authoritarianism and specifically how you know it's authoritarianism. I think is a question that a lot of people actually don't know how to answer, right? Like to us, it's obvious, right? But to a lot of people, it's not. And so maybe this is worth understanding a little bit. The reason that I think it's authoritarianism is because Donald Trump put out a tweet on Truth Social 2 days ago accusing half the country of being domestic terrorists. Like, this is authoritarianism when you're doing that kind of dehumanization rhetoric. But behind that rhetoric is a set of policies designed to advance the security state with ever-encroaching power through abuses of power until such time as that power is undeniable. And I do believe we're seeing that process play out, and we got kind of a lot of data on this, like, but also like the fact that, the way they abused like the authorization and use of military force to basically start a war with Iran unilaterally. Like Congress didn't debate that. They just went. Why did they do it? And turns out they did it because Trump, we don't actually know. It's all in his head. So was there corrupt intent? I think there is. Because why else would you do it? And he didn't know about them closing the Strait of Hormuz. We knew they would close the Strait of Hormuz. This was war gamed out like decades ago. We knew that could do that. And that's why we never screwed with them. We'd contain them. We surround them with air bases and missile defenses. And we say, okay, you're in the box and that's where you're staying. But we knew they would close the Strait. Right. And now the world economy teeters on the edge of ruin. Like, that's 20% of the world's oil.
Yeah. Iran
that happened because Donald Trump. I mean, what do we, I mean, do you think it's going to break him? Do you think it's I don't buy the 4D chess argument that this is like somehow him being smart and he's going to actually just screw the China. I think it's just going to screw a whole bunch of people. You're going to see economies collapse.
Yes.
Now, that's if the strait stays closed. Now, I do think it will probably be open because eventually Europe is going to get sick of this shit and they're going to deploy a fleet and they're going to open it. And they'll probably push the
want those economies to collapse. That's
the economy.
We want our economy to collapse.
Our economy won't collapse. Yeah, no, yeah. We want them all to collapse.
We want to collapse Japan.
I mean, so your argument is that it's about China, but I could argue that it will only benefit them.
It's only pushing. Like, so Nick, I encourage you to look into the petrodollar and how that. Okay, cool. So, like, your argument on BRICS is kind of a weird argument, just putting China out there because it's not just China, it's BRICS. And it's a larger argument on the economy and who, like, really runs the world's global oil market. I don't think it's a 4D chess. I think we're in over our heads at this point. Like, I know you're shaking your head, Carl, but
he's
for
shaking his
you
head
to
about my
say, I mean, for you to sit here and say, like, that's our plan, and like for us to be like, hey, it's going to collapse, not only like it's going to collapse other countries' economies, and you're like, that's our plan. And some of those economies are our allies. What is the advantage to collapsing Japan or South Korea? Because Japan has come out and said, hey, we have 9 months worth of oil. And after 9 months, our economy will stop. Our country will cease. There are other countries out there that have less time than that don't have the oil reserves. And those people are our allies. And so when you're out here saying, yeah, cool, that's our plan. Our plan is to fuck all of our allies and have Israel as our ally, and we like support them financially. So we're going to give up generational allies since World War II and disrupt the world order for what reason?
to make our hemisphere more viable, because Europe is dying, Asia is dying. They're losing population. They're not doing well. Their economy is not sustainable. They don't have any good economic models. Africa never had any ice, so they don't have deep water seaports. They don't have clean rivers. They don't have smooth sailing. It's too. I'm not saying it won't be bad, but it will be.
I'm going to let Carl talk.
Yeah, he's freaking
before
out.
he has an aneurysm.
Don't have an aneurysm, bro.
Okay, so I'm gonna piggyback off of what Nick said. Right, I will agree that there does seem to be a trend within this administration to be oriented on an old form of geopolitics, which is the spheres of influence. It does seem that there does seem to be an effort by the American government, this current administration, to develop the Western Hemisphere as the sphere of influence that is dominated by the United States, and everyone else can figure it out for themselves after the fact. But I will say this, right, into Nick's point about how we're trying to choke China and that Iran is all about China. That would be true if the Straits of Hormuz were closed to ships that were transporting oil from Iran to China, which it is not, right? That would be true if the United States did not pull up and loosen tariffs on Iranian oil that was already in boats, that was already out at sea. That would be true if the United States didn't loosen the tariffs that we have and the sanctions that we have on Russian oil and allow Russia to participate in the oil market again. All of those things would be true if we didn't do those things, right? So the fact of the matter is that the current administration is operating in a fashion that is, one, very selfish and self-centered, right? But two, is operating in a manner that is beneficial to both Russia and China, two of our primary adversaries in the world. So he's benefiting them more than he's benefiting us.
I worry about Taiwan a lot. And she has declared, I mean, and again, these guys, when authoritarian leaders do their shtick, they will tell you what they want to do. Like, they're not going to be silent about it, because you still have to build popular support. Now, there might be some bullshit lie around it or whatever, but they're going to tell you what they're really all about. He's talking about doing it in 2028. Like, he has this grand vision of a unified China, and it's in like all of his speeches. He talks about it all the time. Like, they're gonna take a swing at the ball. And so what this really does is, because we didn't tell our allies and we just kind of did it with Israel, who's right now in kind of the shithouse with like everybody in the world, is we have isolated ourselves at a time when China is deciding whether it wants to rise militarily or not and start to expand militarily rather than economically. And then the security guarantee, the strategic ambiguity security guarantee that Taiwan has operated under for, 60 years or 80 years is it's no longer there, right? Effectively, it's not worth the paper it's printed on, because you still need will to enforce it. And I don't believe the administration will protect Taiwan if Taiwan gets invaded. They'll be like, whatever, what does Taiwan do for us, right? And that's kind of where we are.
I think we got to remember, when we talk about with respect to China, they probably lied to us about their population for the last 20 years. They probably lied to us about their COVID numbers throughout the pandemic.
Well, they definitely
everything they make is like the shit you buy at Harbor Freight. So remember those 2 planes that went down due to friendly fire over Kuwait? I am fully convinced that that was intentional, to show China and Russia that your shit doesn't work on us, but our shit works on us, and our shit is better than yours, and we can drop you. So I think the biggest problem with China is the first island chain. Dude, there's no way they can get out. And that might include taking Taiwan, and hopefully we build our industrial plant fast enough and high enough that we can absorb that blow immediately, but we will absorb that blow.
There's going to be no way we can defend it with us how we are with Iran. Logistically speaking, watching from OSNIT moves from stateside to the Middle East is a lot easier than doing it stateside to the Pacific.
Yeah, but we built up the Pacific for like the last 6 years, and I was out at that point in time, but Carl probably knows a little bit more about it. But we have an enormous...
I've been in the Pacific in the last 6 years.
Oh, okay. So you saw it. We were building up, and we had that huge Indo-Pac kind of shift to set conditions for that. There's only 2 types of wars, right? There's a preventive war and there's a war of opportunity. The war in Iran is a war of opportunity. It will change the global world order. It will minimize the hydrocarbons coming out of the Middle East for everybody in the world, and the only one who compete is us. We've also, the South American and Central American countries who have hydrocarbon assets, we're either snatching up their leaders and putting them in where Diddy was, or we are putting enormous economic and political pressure on them to ensure that we absorb the least damage. I'm not saying it's not going to be bad, but we absorb the least damage. And think about it as your family. Think about it as your...
It seems a lot like they're trying to build the technocracy from like 1920s and 30s and 40s that was tried to be built that didn't get built.
Yeah, the technological limitations, yeah.
So I want to let Brian go, but I do want to touch on something before we close out that you said. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so what you laid out, right, is the kind of spheres of influence theory of the world. And I say this as someone who is like I think Reagan was a good president. I find that model of the management of the world to be so morally abhorrent. Like, my soul just rejects it on principle. Like, the idea of an international world order based on rules, where you have trade, like trade, okay? This is something that the Trumpers fight a lot. They're not big on trade, right? Trade is literally the greatest gift America gave to the planet. It pulled billions of people out of poverty, because before that time, the way you got resources by being an extended client state of an imperial power. And what we did is we deployed our Navy and said anybody can trade with anybody so long as you are inside the American alliance system. We do not require patronage. You do not have to pay us. We're just going to do this as a service. And in doing that, like there's a reason that you have 7 to 8% growth rates in Africa. And that reason is because there's a trading system where they can sell their goods. If you don't have steel, if you don't have coal, if you don't have people, if you don't have food, right? If you don't have one of those 4 things in the before times, before World War II, you were a colony.
Yeah.
The international system exists because we buttressed it with American power. And we have chosen to abandon that. That decision has already been made really on both sides at some level because we're too internally divided. We're too internally focused.
But they recovered.
This is not going to end well. And if we return to a 1920s style world, we are setting ourselves up, even if it's not the Iran war blowing up into something horrific, we are setting ourselves up for a world war.
Yeah, I agree because I think I posed the question last week sometime, how many countries have to be bombed before it becomes a world war? Because we're at a lot currently. So I want to address a few things that you said, Nicholas, before we close out for the night. And Winged Nut, I agree on your Zioterrorism comment. I do want to acknowledge that. We're anti-Zionists here. I don't know. Nick's probably a Zionist. We're anti-Zionists.
Anti-Zionist.
Good. We agree on one important point. So the few things I do want to address is what Brian said, right? I also find the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine abhorrent. Just because other countries' militaries are not as powerful as yours does not mean that you get to kidnap other people's presidents and influence policy based on how big your military is or your economy. I think that that is abhorrent from a military standpoint. It's gross behavior, right? Like we don't just go say this is mine now. And since you're an anti-Zionist, like if you're an anti-Zionist against Israel, right, of them encroaching in Palestine, and then now they're taking land in Lebanon, claiming it as their own, you should
okay
be
with that.
against it for your own country to do the same thing of being like, hey, let's take Greenland, let's influence Cuba, let's influence Venezuela, let's it's gross policy, right? I think it's gross. But what that tells me about you as a person, and it's a weird insight, is that you may be an anti-Zionist, but you're an imperialist. And that is not, that's a definitive, I think, moral difference, right, between people on this panel and you is like, I'm an anti-imperialist. I think us owning Guam is dumb. I think Puerto Rico, if they want to be their own independent nation, they should. Like, it's 2026. I think it's gross, and our imperialism has cost our brothers and sisters their lives over 250 years, our fucking conquests. And so for you sitting here like rooting for it, it's just kind of gut-wrenching knowing that it's like, oh yeah, that's cool, we should do this, and it is odd. But the bigger thing is I work in construction, and I told you that last time, right? I build schools. And so if
I don't undermine the sacrifice of any of us in any way, shape, or form. If you wanted
I
to,
don't think you do. I don't think that you undermine it.
Okay.
I don't think that you lack the care. I think as veterans, we all have the same gut-wrenching punch when we hear that a brother and sister in uniform, either active duty or veteran, has passed away. I think everybody, no matter political ideology, as a veteran, we take it personally. And, I don't think that. I just think as imperialists, we have lost a lot of our brothers and sisters to needless wars due to our imperialistic ideas. And I think that that needs to stop. And it's kind of antithetical to your own belief system of trying to do a sphere of influence while also being an imperialist in a different sector of the world. But that's neither here nor there. My bigger thing is about the industrial is that we don't have, right? We don't have steel production in this country to sustain. We don't have farms to sustain this country. We don't have these things. So if we become the sphere of influence, but we are not the influence, right?
We'll get them.
We have to, like on an economic scale, like Brian said, we open trade, right, to the world. And we have become a consumeristic society and not a producer society. The only thing we're really producing right now is AI technology, but other countries are catching up. But AI technology does not create jobs in masses, and it ruins the environment, and it costs us a shit ton of money. And so therefore, like the idea that somehow if we become more isolationists, that we're going to gain more power is ridiculous, because it doesn't make sense. We are not set up to become isolationists. And if we continue going down that path of isolationism, like we will fuck ourselves. And
I'm
it's
not an
like, no,
isolationist. I'm not an isolationist.
but when you talk about a sphere of influence, right? Like the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is specifically what you said. Like, that's a great idea. That's an isolationist in ideology thinking. Let me explain why. Because not even in our sphere of influence, not all products that we need to survive are produced in that sphere of influence. And trade has enabled to do that.
Yeah, there's been a sharp turn against trade on both sides of the political spectrum, actually. And we're already paying for it, and reading some study somewhere that so if you had like a 3% inflation rate, 1.3% of that inflation, so like essentially a full third of the inflation, was due to Trump tariffs that Biden did not remove. Right? And so what that means is everything costs more, we have less stuff, and that's a direct consequence of tariff policy, because and I'm a free market guy, so like if they can make steel better somewhere else, it's actually better to import it because you're getting it at a discount. And then you're going to take that steel and you're going to turn it into cars or other things. And
Right.
we do a lot of high-end production. So like, yeah, I mean, we only make 10% of the chips in the world, but we make some of the best chips, like the top chips were made here. There is a lot of value-added work that we do. We do a lot of the intellectual work and the finance work and all that type of stuff, and that produces enormous value. Trade deficits are not necessarily bad, because when you have a trade deficit, what that means is you're exporting money, but you're importing stuff, and that means you have more stuff, and that means your economy can grow faster, and that's okay. You don't have to have a positive trade deficit. It's not necessarily a negative thing. It means you're a prosperous society and you could buy the stuff you need.
Yeah, but we can build that out very, very quickly.
We can, and I'm pro building stuff out. Like, we should have some steel. It's a strategic resource, right? We should be able to do chips.
Man,
It's a strategic resource.
I know.
Like, I'm with you. I'm with you there, right?
But I mean, we can do all these things ourselves with the resources that we have at hand. And the reason why we're so dependent on everybody else for all these supply chain issues is because of decisions we made, not because of necessity. And it will change the way we look, and it will change the way we interact, and all those things are important. But I'm certainly not an isolationist. I want to dominate the globe. I think we're the best thing going. I think the global maritime order is the best thing that has ever happened to our species on this rock. And I think we will continue to maintain that. However, I think that because of the demographics and resources of the old world, coupled with geography of the continent of Africa, which is problematic because they didn't have ice. And what I mean by that is an ice sheet, so they have no deep water ports. It's very difficult for them to trade. They're going to have to figure out another mode. I think they will, and I think it'll be okay. But I want our hemisphere impregnable. And Cuba was the number one tourist attraction in
You want to impregnate our hemisphere?
No, make it impregnable. But no, I mean, if anybody was going to impregnate our hemisphere, I'm telling you guys, you want it to be me. Anyway, that's another story. But we can use it like it's our time. The old world is dying off. I'm sorry that it's happening. It's so fascinating, and so many important things happened, and so much culture came from it, and so many important things came from it. And we went back over there and we did our things there. But the demographics are bad. Unless you're in Southeast Asia and you're in the Pacific Islanders, Australia's doing okay. Obviously, the continent of Africa is doing okay. But Eurasia is they're just their time is over, man. And like, why not take advantage of that? Why not be the thing? And you say, imperialism is bad. Imperialism is bad if you have a bad empire. And if we're spreading our
We're the
methods
bad
around,
guys. We are the bad guys. Like right now, outside of our sphere of fucking influence that you think we somehow dominate, the rest of the world looks at us like we are the bad guys, right?
that's
Like
not.
we've killed.
I've only been to 37 countries, and that was not my experience.
Have you in the last year and a
Hold
half?
on, time out. I am talking about right here, right now, around the world. We have asked for help from our historical allies, and they have said no. And so I I I find it very odd that in the beginning of that whatever monologue
Sorry.
that you said no, you're fine. I was trying to TBI. There's probably a better word. Uh, that you said you wanted to dominate the globe, but then at the end you were like, well, I want to dominate the sphere. It's not our job, right? Like, so Carl's putting up some facts. Africa actually has more deep water ports than we do. So I have found this conversation strange tonight. Jen, I like that you're here. I do think, how do I want to put this? Earlier in the pod, you said something along the lines of you think we come off as arrogant sometimes. But the fact is that it's not really arrogance if you take the time to like read it, right? Is like you put out a stat that like Africa doesn't have deep water ports while we're actively researching deep water ports in Africa. And it like turns
I think
out
only
that
North Africa has them.
but no, I'm just saying is we mentioned it the last time you were on is that there's an information problem that's happening, like a larger information problem is we're not researching both sides. Everybody in around the world is not researching enough to become educated or understand how to find the true facts because there's often when I go to research something and I say it and then I'm incorrect and then somebody corrects me and I do my due diligence to just go look it up and make sure I'm correct. Right. As I enjoyed this conversation, I think it got weird. We knew
Sorry,
that
I'm a weird guy.
no. I just think that it showcases that we have very different belief systems within our own community. And I do appreciate you being here. And not everybody's going to understand why we have North Africa. So I find value in these conversations with people of the different sides and let people see us having these conversations in a respectful manner and not like yelling at each other and stuff like that. I don't think that's productive, and that's why we ended up where we are. So I am gonna let everybody close out what I'd like everybody to do because No Kings is on Saturday. Nick, I'm pretty sure you're not going to No Kings unless you show up as a counter protester. And if you are going as a counter protester, please let us know and shout that out so we know to watch out for you. Brian, I want you to go first, shout out what y'all are doing
Sure.
out there.
So I'm going to be speaking in Fitchburg at 10:30. I will be in Maynard at 4 p.m. I will also be in Boston just as a participant. I haven't been to a big rally yet, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. They're planning on 150,000 people, so maybe I jinxed it, but I think we're going to hit big numbers.
Bree and Hannah.
I'm going to be marshaling, but
I will be here in Fayetteville with Common Veterans and Common Defense. We will have a meetup point at 10 a.m. at Cross Creek Linear Park. And our event here in Fayetteville runs from 10 a.m. to noon, and then our Raleigh Capital event runs from 1 to 3 p.m.
So I will be in Fayetteville as a marshal as well. So I'll be down there working with Rory and Hannah. Not getting a chance to speak this time around, but maybe next time around I'll get myself worked in there as a speaker. So really excited though because I was able to get clearance from the FAA to fly my drone. So should that be a request, I'll be able to put it up in the air and take some some good aerial shots.
Corey or Hannah, can you please let everybody know what Mayhem is doing since he had to exit?
Mayhem will be at the Raleigh Capital event from 1 to 3, as will Nikwe with Common Defense.
Nicholas, are you going to be a counter protester before I say what I'm doing?
No. And listen, I think even though I don't agree with what the reason why you guys are what you're doing, I am grateful that we are in a place where you guys can. And I think that's what really fucking matters. I disagree, and I will not be in a counter protest. I have a British bulldog who's very fat, and I need to stay close to him all the time. And I live so far away from anything that I'm in Trump country in California, which is the weirdest place on earth.
Fair. So I will be in Jacksonville, Florida. There are multiple events in Jacksonville. I will be at the main event. It kicks off at 1 at Friendship Fountain. The step off time will be 1:15. Veterans are meeting at the southwest corner of River Place and Main at 1300. So we can march together. And then there's going to be a rally. It should end around 1600-ish, give or take. So hit us up. You'll see us there. Please be safe over the next few days. So I do want to close us out in the normal way. Yes! Pete, this is the greatest thing that Carl has done for us. And I know Nicholas doesn't understand, but Pete is amazing. I am so excited by Pete. All right. So we close out in the same manner every time for everybody watching. It's a safety brief. It happens every Friday or last day of the week at close of business. And it is done by your leaders to remind you how not to be a degenerate over the weekend. So we like to do the same thing here. We start off the same way. Do not beat your spouse, your child, or your pet. Do not add to the population or subtract from the population unless you intend to and have a plan. Don't end up in the hospital or jail. If it seems like a good idea at 02, it's not. Go to sleep. Drink responsibly, and if you can't do that, at least drink accountably. Know your limit and stop well before texting anybody you shouldn't. If you wake up and don't know where you are, that's a problem. If you drink, don't drive. And if you can't afford an Uber, hit up our page. We'll pay for it. If your driver of the Uber says, watch this, get the fuck out immediately. Hydrate like your life depends on it, because it does. And you're not in an action movie, act accordingly. If it involves fire, explosives, or I saw this on YouTube, think about it, especially with who's around you doing it. Don't pet anything that can eat you. Nothing online's temporary. Yeah, even the apps that say that they delete things, we know nothing is deleted. Don't go viral for all the wrong reasons. And if you do go viral for all the wrong reasons, make sure you tag us, because we will absolutely pump that shit on our page. Don't spend money like everything in one night. Make sure you're budgeting. If someone's got a deal for you, they don't. And if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Take care of your people. If your friend is about to do something stupid, please stop them. And if your friend doing something, if you're that friend doing something stupid, listen to the other guy. Nobody gets left behind, especially at an action. If you plan on doing spicy shit, have a plan, a lawyer, and bail money, and friends to execute that plan with, in that order. Make good decisions. If you can't, make survivable ones. If you need help, call us. Reach out before you crash out. Everybody on this call, including Nick, no matter ideology, veterans, we take care of our own. And so we would rather you reach out to us before you make permanent decisions because of temporary problems. So please reach out to us like heart to heart. Do not buy animals from the dark web and then try to donate them to the zoo, or you'll end up with Pete, who appears in our right-hand corner. Don't attempt to ride, fight, or befriend the wildlife. Do not conduct live fire exercises in housing developments. Do not go whitewater rafting in storm ditches. Do not fight anyone with fewer teeth than you. They obviously have more experience. If someone says, I've done this before while doing something sketchy, probably concern you, not reassure you. If you meet them after midnight, wait 24 hours before making life-changing decisions, and make all of your mental health appointments and take all of your meds and eat healthy. So I always like to close out the same way, but No Kings is this Saturday. Please take the time to go on nokings.org, find your closest action, get involved. If you want to be more involved with this group and it's your first time watching, reach out to us. We'll help you get involved. We just need people to care about the country and what's going on. Our oath is not just to the Constitution, it's to the people around us, the country. Right. So as we're out this weekend, as veterans come out en masse this weekend, I expect a lot of veterans out. Please look out for the most vulnerable around you. It is our responsibility. And if end all be all, put yourself in front of others. That's the commitment you took to this country. Right. So I hope everybody stays safe. If you have a flyer for an action that you would like us to put on our social media, please send it to us. We'll put it on our social media and pump it out. Take pictures of your actions around the country, send them in. We'll put out videos of veterans protesting on No Kings. So I hope everybody has a good night and stay safe out there.